how's it going, everybody? Pragmatic Addict here. So for those who do not know me, my name is Pragmatic Addict. I am a YouTuber from Tucson, and I like to talk about spooky stuff. So throughout this month, me and a few pals have gone to the three main Halloween attractions in Tucson. Those being Nightfall, Slaughterhouse, and Terror in the Corn. Now, I don't actually know if there are, like, any more attractions. As far as I know, there's not, but in the very least, these are, like, the three big ones to actually gain recognition since, like, you know, I don't know, the beginning of, like, time. So it wasn't until last night at our experience at Nightfall that I came to the realization that I had to make this video. Now again, this hasn't really changed. These have always kind of been the three, like, big events as far as Tucson goes for, again, you know, like, since the beginning of, like, the dawn of time. But Nightfall, for example, has been closed for at least the past 2 years due to COVID, and even just like the property of old Tucson Studios itself was actually shut down entirely, and everyone was like really fucking sad about it, as was myself. And one of these three attractions, Terror in the Corn, none of us had actually like ever been to, so that was like a pretty special like time for us. But basically, as I review these three events, what I'm going to be doing is basically talking about like each like history's like, or each attraction's history that I feel is necessary. Obviously, I'm not gonna like, you know, break out the fucking like Bible and talk about, you know, the creation of each fucking like event. But I'm gonna be talking about like, you know, the history that I feel is necessary to bring up as I go along with, you know, my story for each you know, attraction, what I basically liked, didn't like about them, my overall thoughts, and a rating for each attraction. And lastly, before I actually get into the reviewing of the video, I am going to be saying that partially, like, a reason why I wanted to release this video is because this week, in just a few days, me and, you know, my buddies Lane and Jacob, we're going to be going up to Las Vegas for Halloween. And while we're up there, I am going to be vlogging a Halloween event where we will be all going to the Blair Witch Project escape room and the Saw movie escape room, which are actually the biggest escape rooms in the world. I'm going to be going up there vlogging the entire event. We are also going to be revisiting Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures, his haunting museum, which is the most haunting museum in the world. And if you guys would like to see the video that I, you know, dropped previously to the one coming up, it was, I believe, the beginning of this year. It's really poor quality. I had a shitty ass fucking iPhone on me, so like there really isn't much to gain from it. But I mean, hey, you know, it's worth a shot if you guys want to check it out for the hell of it. But yes, guys, without further ado, let's get into the reviews of these three attractions. So the first attraction out of the three that I'm going to be talking about is Nightfall. So this, in my opinion, is Tucson's biggest Halloween event. Always has been. Old Tucson Studios, where the attraction is set, is actually the biggest site as well. It even has like some history where Seth MacFarlane wanted to shoot his terrible ass movie A Million Ways to Die in the West for fucking free, and they obviously said no, so now he like fucking hates Tucson. And I was mostly excited for Nightfall out of the three because, again, just the grand nature of it all. I've also been to Nightfall twice before this. I want to say the last time was in 2016, which I was much older than the first time I went, and I don't really remember any of the haunts or really anything about it that year, but I do remember the group I went with. There weren't really any complaints. There were, you know, some laughs, just fellas hanging out at a Halloween event, no real beef. Now, the first time I went, I was actually like, I don't know, 13 or some shit, and I remember having the hell scared out of me. It was the first time I'd ever gone to like a Halloween event, and I remember there were people running around with like chainsaws and shit, and creepy actors like deliberately following people around. And I remember I went with my mom and my sister, and this is not an exaggeration, but I remember my mom and sister getting like so spooked that they ran into like the women's restroom and just kind of like left me out in the fucking West to die. Just, you know, just ditched me, just like, sorry, you're fucking, you know, you're dead meat. And I remember like I was 13, you know, I wasn't like the youngest age, but I wasn't like, you know, that old either. And this was like my first, again, Halloween event ever. And I remember they like ran into the restroom, man, just left me out there to die with like fucking chainsaw people like running around and shit. And I remember I like fucking like ran into the women's bathroom after them just because I was so fucking scared. Like, dude, I was fucking scared, man. Like, Nightfall was fucking hype. Now, also going back to the size of it all, unlike Terror in the Corn and Slaughterhouse, this is not just like haunted houses, and it's never been that way. There are also like more like family friendly rides. Like there's like a little train ride. There's also like a scary carousel ride where like when the kids ride it, like every now and again like the lights will flicker off and the kids will be like scared out of their fucking wits. There are also several different shows that go on that are performed like from actors that all range differently as far as like scares, like all the haunts do. And with the haunts, I want to say at really all the places, but definitely at Nightfall, they have a rating with like skulls. I think like 1 out of 3, where 1 isn't that scary, 2 is like, I think it's called slightly scary, and then 3 is just scary. And they generally have like, I don't know, like 5 haunts or something with a few more friendly, like family friendly haunts. And again, a few rides and several different shows throughout the night. So again, I was just genuinely like excited for Nightfall. It's just the biggest in general of like the 3, and every year with Nightfall there is a different theme, whether it be clowns or zombies or, you know, in this case murder mystery, like Western thing. And really quickly with that as well, I've said like many times that my favorite genre in general after horror would probably be Western, and obviously with that in mind and with already like the initial general like excitement I had for Nightfall, yeah, I was pretty stoked. And really quickly now, before we entered the gates, we got word that the night had sold out, but the security person was like, yeah, it says sold out, but fuck it, like, go online, maybe you can still buy tickets. So we were just kind of like, okay, whatever. But to our luck, we actually were able to buy fucking tickets, so I don't know what the fucking point was of, like, them saying that, like, the fucking event was sold out. And our biggest issue actually has to do with this, which I will talk about in a bit, but going back to entering the gates, like, when we entered, a really cool dude who was part of the attraction introduced us to this year's Nightfall and was like, so basically what's afoot here is that you are all part of a murder mystery. Throughout the park and all the shows, building, haunts, etc., there are clues to the story hidden here, and you have to find out like who the murderer in the town is. He was like, you know, it's very interactive. There are even actors like scattered around the town that act like NPCs in a game that you can haggle information out of and even get them to do shit for you like along your mission. And yeah, I was fucking hyped now. I was like, okay, it sounds like I'm gonna be going for the fucking platinum, boys. Like, best believe I'm gonna platinum this by the end of the fucking night. I'm gonna know who that fucking murderer is. I'm already cracking the case. But everything after this moment just went to hell. Now, going back to how the event, like, sold out, you couldn't even fucking move in this damn place. Obviously, the big things people are going to be waiting for were the haunted houses. And out of those, like, 4 or 5 haunts, we did, I think, maybe 4. The last one that we missed had, I shit you not, a 2 to 3 fucking hour wait. This, like, the lines at Nightfall this year were like the lines at Disneyland, right? Where you're like waiting in a fucking 2-hour line for a 3-minute ride and like a 2 to 3 out of 10 thrill. And mind you, all of these lines were like extremely long, some shorter, but still fucking long. Now, the hours we had for our scheduled tickets were 7:30 to midnight. Now, what I mean by scheduled tickets is that there were different schedules, whether you like buy the tickets. There were like, you know, 5:30 to 11 p.m. That was just like one, so like that, you know, more attendees can get in and out, which I think is a great idea, but still, just like our schedule alone was so fucking packed. Like, again, these 2-hour plus wait times were just for the haunted houses, not for the several shows that are scheduled for specific times throughout the night. So our biggest issue was like, what's the point of doing like this scheduled, like, you know, ticket idea, which I think is great. You know, again, 5:30 to 11 p.m. is like one slot, and then there's like a 7 to like midnight or some shit. I think that's great. You know, again, you can have more attendees. You can also keep track of how many tickets are being sold so that it's not too fucking packed. But here's the thing is, it's like, what's the point of having that and saying that your shit is sold out when, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful that we were still able to buy tickets regardless of it being sold out. But like, what's the point of saying all that, you know, like that it is sold out and shit if, you know, the lines are still going to be this fucking long. Now, I get it, you know, lines at like any, like, you know, theme park are going to be, you know, like this. But with this having shows and like, you know, a scheduled time, like only like a limited time to like 7:30 to midnight, and with several shows like, you know, scheduled at certain times, what was the fucking point? Like, we could not fucking move in this fucking place. And like, you know, again, all these lines, while they were like, you know, some shorter than others, There was times where we were standing in like 2 to 3 hour fucking lines. Now again, when I was younger, I remember just getting the pants scared out of me in Nightfall. And one of the things the dudes at the beginning also stated that was, and this is fucking huge, is that he said there weren't going to be any actors running around with chainsaws, stalking or chasing attendees, jump scaring sissies out of the fucking, like, actual grounds of the place. Only in the haunts. And now, for some, that may sound like a fair, thing, like, not that huge of an issue, because it's like, yeah, these are, like, the haunted houses. But hear me out. As a Halloween event, and one of the most, like, noticeable and, like, iconic, for Tucson, whether it be, like, size or budget or even history, and also being closed for a few years and this marking like their return, it was absolutely fucking disheartening. Like, when we entered the gates, and again, this is, a sold out night at like the biggest like Halloween event in the city. When we walked through the fucking gates at a sold out like Halloween event night, there was not a single shriek. Like, we walked in, we were like, something's wrong. Why is there, like, not a single shriek, not a single, like, ah, hoo, 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 hoo. Like, there was nothing going on, man. Like, we walked in and it was like, okay, like, there's a lot of people. There's clearly, like, decorations and, like, haunted house, like, in the fucking background. But, like, why does it sound like an actual ghost town? Like, I know the theme of this fucking, like, Nightfall this year is ghost town. But goddamn, they really fucking nailed it with that ambiance. And even with the size of Nightfall and its theme, and not only that, but like all the surroundings that the presenter had stated that there would be, they just didn't seem to really give a shit. There must have been like 2 like actors total, cause we didn't see a single fucking one. And the haunts, there must have been like 2 actors per haunt. Cause actually getting to the haunts now, again, it was like a line at fucking Disneyland, where you stand in a 2-hour line for a 3-minute ride and like, 1 or a 2 out of 10 thrill. Well, at least for this line for like this ride anyway. So this line I'm talking about in particular is, sure, a family-friendly one. It's a train ride. But even when I was younger, I still remember like much more attempt, like, with the train ride. Like, I remember I remember when I was younger, like the conductor would like sound all kooky, he'd say like a little ghost story maybe, with this being like, old Tucson, like a Wild Western layout, as you're on the train ride, like, people would be like jumping out, scaring you while the train passed by, and maybe go into like little like cavern or like tunnel shit, something spooky, like at least attempting, to make a train ride in a Halloween event. There was nothing this time around. I think like the biggest and maybe only thing like I got out of like, sitting on this train ride after like standing 2 hours in fucking line with my pals was like the fact that I was able to like stretch my ass cheeks on the fucking seat for a few minutes. Now, we weren't too upset because weirdly enough, like the first haunt we went into like was actually the shortest line we had of the night, but this like that was come to realize because like the haunt was like 2 fucking feet long. I shit you not. It was like walking from like your bedroom down the hallway to the kitchen. Like, that's how fucking long this first haunted house was. And I will say, I didn't actually like catch the skull rating on this one, but there were like 2 jump scares that got me. And that was like it, like after that, it was over. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid, like, and then like, the second that happens, like, sure, like you feel that, but like the second it happens, the adrenaline hits and it's fucking over. And sure, this was the first haunted house that we went to and it was the shortest line like of the, attraction. So like we weren't too upset. We were like, okay, well that was kind of like, dick. That was maybe like 1 skull out of like the 3. And again, sure, there were 2, jump scares that got me, but those were literally the only 2. And this like was like a haunted house that like, it was like, a fucking, again, it was like going from your bedroom down the hallway to get like a snack in the kitchen. And like, as you're passing the fucking like hallway, someone spooks you out of the bathroom, and then you open the fridge and someone fucking scares you there. And it's like, ooh, you're cool, you got me on those 2 thrills. And then you walk out the front door and it's over. So it's like, sure, there was 2 jump scares that got me, but those were the only 2. And the second they happened, it was done. Now, the second haunt we went to, which I actually do give props to, had a rating of, I think, 2 skulls. Which was like the slightly scary rating. And I thought this thing was just going to take it in the fucking ass. I mean, there was a dude in front of us that was literally like, that literally had his baby in a fucking stroller. Like, we entered the haunted house, and I was like, okay, it's slightly scary. Okay, well, that last one, whew, let's hope that wasn't a fucking 3 skull. But yeah, we walked in, there was this guy like pushing a baby in a stroller throughout the fucking haunted house, and I'm like, you know a Halloween event is hype when they got a fucking daycare there. Now, I will say, this was the biggest size haunt, and it had the most detail, and bonus for me, my biggest fear is actually spiders. I have arachnophobia, but in saying this, the thrill was mainly from seeing these spider props. And of the actual layout, like, of the haunt, it was kind of like, you know, cavern themed, so, like, there were little, like, tunnels and, like, wobbly-ass bridges that were, like, X amount of feet up, so just journeying through it and, like, everything was a fun enough, like, spooky adventure. And while I got, like, you know, while I got for fucking obvious reasons, it was overall, like, still, like, fun enough. It wasn't the scariest thing, you know, it was still only rated, like, you know, slightly scary. And it was the scariest thing I think that I had that night. Yeah, it fucking sucked. Like, again, you know, for a haunted house that had, like, 2 skulls and was rated slightly scary, and, you know, even kids in there were, like, you know, kind of, you know, like, a little bit spooked, but not as spooked. You know, again, I just, like, you know, attention to detail was fine. You know, again, there was, like, giant-ass, like, you know, spider props and shit. You're, like, going down this fucking tunnel. Again, it's, like, a cavern theme. So, you know, there's, like, obviously fake spider webs and spiders everywhere. And, you know, you're, like, going through these dark cave things. And, you know, you're, like, walking across these, like, you know, sketchy little, like, trenches and shit. I just thought it was fun. Like, I thought, like, for a layout of a haunted house and for the space, you know, they did fine with it. And again, this was slightly scary, supposedly, so I think that for that rating, it was fine. But for this to be the scariest, not that it scared me that much, but, like, for it to be the scariest thing of the night if I had to pick something, and, like, you know, for it being 2 skulls saying slightly scary, that's obviously not a good takeaway that you have from this. Now, mind you, we didn't, like, you know, make it to the last haunt, which probably was the big one, judging by the 3-hour fucking wait time in the line, and by the fact that, like, we went to all the other haunts and they were just, like, fucking gummy bear land. But with how much of a letdown, like, it all was, and by literally everything so far, and by all of the long-ass waits we had in line and missing, like, you know, everything from, like, you know, from, like, besides the haunts, and the fact that they were almost closing now, we just didn't have that fucking, like, you know, willpower to actually get through it, even if it was going to be, like, the big one. Like, it was just, like, there was nothing else. Even if that was a good haunted house, I didn't just want to go and pay, like, $50 for a fucking ticket at a fucking Halloween event, like an actual theme park, whatever, just for one possibly successful haunt that I had to fucking also pay $50 and wait in a 3-hour fucking line for. We just weren't having it. We all basically just hated Nightfall. And mind you, Jacob was there. And he even fucking hated it. He was like falling asleep in the fucking haunted houses. And mind you, my boy said that Smile, the one that released this year, yeah, he said it was one of the scariest movies he'd ever seen. And he was even fucking falling asleep in some of the goddamn haunted houses. Like, we were literally about to enter some of the haunted houses and we didn't hear shit. I was like, this haunted house is either soundproof or this shit fucking sucks. But yeah, overall, this one definitely, like, was the worst of the 3 attractions, which it only has always been the cream of the crop, but it had, like, every reason not to be, you know, like the worst. Again, size, budget, recognition, it could have just stayed closed another year at this point. Like, Santa could have given me a fucking lump of coal for Christmas, and I would have been happier with that because at least he fucking gave me something. Overall, guys, I'm going to give Nightfall a 0.1 to a 0.2 out of 10. Now, the next attraction I'm going to be talking about is Slaughterhouse. So much like Nightfall, this one has a lot of coverage behind it. It's known highly as the most haunted thing in Tucson. It used to be an actual slaughterhouse, and it was even, like, on an episode of Ghost Adventures where Zach and special guest Post Malone investigate, and the ghost calls Post, like, Stinky or something.
Something about this man that's sitting on that desk? Dirty. I'm aiming it at Post and it just said dirty.
There you go.
Sorry, Post.
So like Nightfall, I've been to Slaughterhouse a few times. This was either my 3rd or 4th time, and like Nightfall, I hadn't really had any real complaints as far as, like, you know, what I've experienced in past years. I remember some solid enough haunted houses, some actors running around with fucking clown horns or chainsaws and terrorizing the environment, and this year wasn't any different. Though I want to make a very important note. So we actually went on opening night, and it was deader than the actual spooky season itself. It had actually poured, like, the day leading into that, so one of the haunts out of the 4 was actually closed, which I remember going into it, years prior. And what sucks is I actually remember this specific haunt being my favorite out of the bunch. So that was a bummer, but obviously because of that and the rain, it was extremely dead. Which in some ways sounds pretty hype. You got the whole attraction to yourselves. Well, when it comes to actual Halloween events and attractions, weirdly enough, you actually want that crowd. You want it to feel lively, and you want to see all the pansies and different sorts of like people and reactions, and just overall feel like part of an actual event. Now with saying this, it was pretty sweet to not have to wait in really any line and being able to do, for the most part, go through the haunted house without like other attendees. That's my biggest pet peeve with haunts, is being stuck behind a group of like 13-year-olds or like a bunch of sissies that just scream over every creak and boo. But what I do want to note that is a criticism is that this is now my 3rd time going. I went last year and I also went in 2019. And my biggest criticism is that they have the same haunts every year. They don't change anything up. Obviously, I don't remember every jump scare or actor and costume from the past times I went, but I definitely, before entering the haunts was I think this is the clown one, and it was. And I think this one, was the barn kind of setting, and it was. And again, I still got spooked at times. Again, I didn't remember every jump scare, but just to know I was going into the same haunts like I've been to every other year, that adrenaline was kind of absent, and it'd be cool if they just actually change shit up a bit every year. Another thing I want to mention is that this is the smallest attraction of the 3. You enter and you do a 180 in place and you see the whole thing, and it's not very spacey, but I do want to mention that they still try, and even much harder than Nightfall. When you walk in, you hear chainsaws revving and people screaming, and when you walk in, there is just kind of a field of dirt, and around the actual slaughterhouse, a barrier, is all the haunts and a gift shop, and I just don't think it's all that bad. It lets you gather some thoughts before, where you really want to go, and even sort of preps you up in a fine way. Another thing I want to add, which I have some thoughts on, is that if you pay a little extra, I don't know how much exactly, I think it's $10 or some shit, you can actually do an interactive zombie shooter apocalypse event that I think is pretty immersive enough with what they actually do. Before you enter, there are drill sergeants that try and prep you up and try and roast you and shit and say if they think that you're gonna make it out or not. And it kind of sets up a horror shooter, and as a fan of Resident Evil games, it heavily reminded me of that, and I fucking crushed it. I was clapping cheeks and taking fucking names. They give these decently heavy guns that shoot and feel legit enough. They give you a little tutorial for safety protocols. They tell you that you have a certain amount of ammunition and all that shit, so don't waste your bullets like a dipshit. It is also a 2-floor part of the slaughterhouse, and there's you have to go and make your way through this environment and try and make it to an upper floor and escape and shoot zombies along the way, which are actors obviously, and when you shoot them, they actually are convincing, in the ways that they actually fucking die. And what I liked is that you don't have any map or anything, and it is actually a pretty decent size. But it is in a sense kind of it does kind of play out like laser tag, except a more realistic looking gun. And you're just blasting down actors dressed up as zombies trying to eat your meat. And it definitely was the most different aspect if in the attraction. And sure, it is a bit extra, but it was definitely fun and memorable enough, and as a Halloween attraction that so far hasn't really changed shit up per year, I'd look forward to hitting this up again. Overall, I'm gonna give the Slaughterhouse a strong 3 out of 10, probably a 3 to 3.6 to a 3.7. And the last attraction I'm gonna be talking about now is Terror in the Corn. So again, I'd never been to Terror in the Corn. Neither have the other fellas in my party, which again was a special moment because we'd all been to Nightfall before and the Slaughterhouse, but not Terror in the Corn. And Terror in the Corn, like Slaughterhouse, taking place at a slaughterhouse, this resides in a cornfield. And even though I haven't ever been, as a local, I've heard talk about this year after year, and the big thing I've always heard hoopla about was a certain attraction at this event, which is the Haunted Corn Maze, which is a maze in the cornfield, and it's turned scary for the Halloween season. Pretty straightforward. But I'd always thought that was honestly all that there was to this attraction. It was just this massive cornfield made maze where it's a haunted house cornfield maze. That's all I ever thought it was. But Not only was it not that at all, but it was so much more. This was without a doubt not only mine, but all of our favorites, attraction of the three. So I don't actually know if this was the smallest or the biggest attraction. It's kind of strange because it's laid out pretty similar to the Slaughterhouse, where it's this big kind of like open area, it's this like big dirt field, and all around like the barrier of the attraction is where all the haunted houses are lined up, and you just kind of make your way down like the line of them. But it is definitely like a wider area than Slaughterhouse, maybe a bit smaller overall than Nightfall's overall event, and much like Slaughterhouse, there are creepy actors running around with with a bunch of shit, being menaces. But what I want to note is that the actual actors of this attraction were such great spirits. They were pretty relentless as far as really trying to scare people. We had our eye on a couple of actors in particular that just didn't really ever seem to let up, and it just really seemed like they were really passionate about traumatizing people and really doing their actual fucking job. And throughout the night, there was even several times where people would take fun and silly photos with the actors. The only time these actors broke character, I would say, was if someone wanted to take a photo with them, and even then they would still be little brats about it. Sometimes people would try and take selfies with them, and the actors would make poses with their pitchforks or whatever, and then right when they're about to snap it, they would run just to be a fucking dipshit about it, just to be that much of a brat. And even as far as the line goes, they were even they even try to make the lines not as grueling of a process. I remember when we were waiting in lines, sometimes the actors would come and poke on people's shoulders, and then the person would turn around, they'd move over here, and then the person would turn that way and they'd get jump scared. Or sometimes they would just sneak up behind somebody in line, braid down their neck, and then the person would turn around, they'd be there. Just great and fun horror pranksters. There was never really a genuinely dull moment at this attraction. And now what I want to talk about is not only the haunts in general, but the first one in particular. So this is the best haunted house that I have ever been to. This first one is called We're All Mad Here, which I'm sure many of you know the reference. It is from the movie Alice in Wonderland, which coincidentally is my second favorite film of all time behind The Shining. And yes, this was a fully Alice in Wonderland inspired haunted house, and it was pretty damn good. Not only because it's source material, but also just the scares in this haunt were the most non-lenient I've ever experienced so far. But this was also the longest haunted house I've ever been in. I want to say it was maybe a good 15 minutes or so, and what I liked about it a lot is, so basically it is an Alice in Wonderland themed haunted house, and what worked really well was also the help of this attraction, being in a place like a cornfield. So while every haunt had connections to the cornfield, they used that to their advantages to get really creative. I think it's fair enough to say that when someone goes to a Halloween event or a haunted house, the first thing that's on their mind, being Alice in Wonderland, I think it's pretty much fair to say that that's not really what someone's gonna expect. So when we saw that, we were like, oh wow, they're not just in the mindset of hey, we have a cornfield, let's just set up some scarecrows and hide in the crops. Again, their actors, they really seemed genuinely caring and passionate and wanted to make an actual fun Halloween event. And before I get more sidetracked, so this, Wonderland haunt, how they use the cornfield in this one is that they kind of decorate it like the woods from the movie, like the Togi Woods, except it was 9 at night and horror themes. So just with that in mind, and with this being an Alice in Wonderland themed, I was just so fucking curious as to what was actually going to be in store for this and how this haunted house would actually play out. And I thought they did really well with it. There are little crawl spaces when Alice enters the rabbit hole. There's little creepy psychedelic tunnels and twists and turns that I think was supposed to be based off of when she's actually falling through the rabbit hole. And the big one that I really want to talk about, going back to when I said that this haunt really pushed limits more than I'd ever been in, is that this haunt was very claustrophobia based. You get to a part in the haunted house where they send a certain amount of people in a large enough group, maybe I don't know, 10 or so people, and they basically imagine it like this. You're in a house of mirrors, that layout where it's kind of maze-ish, but the lights are all off, literally pitch fucking black. and all you can do is like feel around like, you know, the walls and you know, like the people in front of you. And all you can do is feel around and try to work your way out and around. And you know, one thing I also want to say is that it gets really fucking stuffy and hot because of all the people. And also, like, what I want to mention is that the walls are extremely thin. Like, I shit you not, like, so basically it's like again, like the layout of like, you know, like a House of Mirrors. Like, you're like going through these like really skinny like fucking walls and shit. Like, I shit you not, like there were times where like I got stuck in this fucking wall because obviously you can't see shit. The lights are, you know, it's completely pitch black in there. You're trying to feel around for like, you know, the person in front of you, follow them, like the walls around you. And there were times where I got fucking like stuck in between these fucking walls. And it was like Winnie the Pooh when he eats too much fucking honey. And like the people in back of me were like Rabbit trying to push my fucking fat ass through. But I also want to say there was a moment where I actually got like a little bit dissociated, which is obviously like, you know, an important like, you know, subject and shit. But I also respected it because I'm like, holy shit, a haunted house is actually doing this to me. And again, with this haunt, you know, like being very lengthy, I do want to add that this part was maybe like a good 5 minutes or so. It was lengthy and pretty fucking risky compared to like what haunts I've been in before. So just all in all, this was and is the best haunted house I've ever been in. Now getting to the other haunts, I think there was like a total of 3 of them. There was the Wonderland one, an Asylum one, and a pirate themed one. And I will say, these were shorter definitely, but as haunted houses, they still worked well. And I'd actually say just overall, as far as like a collection of haunts in one attraction, Terror in the Corn fucking spanks hard. The Asylum one, for example, it took place at an actual like full-on building that was specifically dedicated to this one haunt and was themed again as an asylum. And again, like, while these other haunts were much shorter, they still, I think, maybe like did everything that they could to make that not an issue or like, you know, the center of attention. For example, before you even get into the asylum house, you have to get through like a mini piece to the haunt that's like a broken down school bus. After you actually make it through, like, you know, like as you actually make your way through the haunted house, you're led to like an outside area, which is, yes, the cornfield. And even like the last haunt now, this short haunted house, like, while it is, you know, the shortest at the Terror of the Corn, this shortest haunted house at this attraction was normal size to every fucking haunt at Nightfall. So I want to make a note of that. Put that, you like, take that into consideration. And it was, yes, original in its own way. It's like actually pirate themed, and before you enter, you get like 3D glasses that you don't actually use for the whole haunt, but like when you walk in, everything is in like 3D and it's really psychedelic. Maybe my favorite part of this was like actually like so there's this part like at the beginning where, like, you know, again, when I was saying like everything is psychedelic, there's this part where it's like kind of like circus themed, and you're going through this like, you know, ball pit like that you see at like fucking like play areas and shit for like kids. You're going through this ball pit, and like, you know, everything's like very psychedelic, everything's in 3D, so like you're going through this like trippy ass ball pit, and like people are like jumping out of the fucking ball pit and scaring you. This wacky fun stuff. And also the very end of the haunt, which was an absolute pitch black House of Mirrors, like with fucking mannequins all over it, which I didn't realize this until like that point, but I really fucking hate mannequins. Now, there's not like actual mirrors. It's kind of like how I was describing in the Wonderland like haunted house, where like it's got that layout of like a House of Mirrors. Like, you know, it's very slender as far as the hallways. You taking like, you know, certain turns and like going into like certain rooms and shit. So basically, how this one worked out is that like it was all pitch black, but there was like flickering lights like that, just rapidly flickering. And that was like your only source of light. And every time you entered a room, there was like, you know, mannequins and like, you know, a certain number. And there was this one room where I walked in, and there must have been like fucking 12 mannequins or some shit. And I just stopped like a fucking deer in headlights, and I'm like, which one's a fucking actor? And sure enough, I ran out of there with my pants barely attached. And those are the 3 haunts, but there is also an escape room that we were pretty set on going into. But after all of the haunts and just like having that only left, and with it being a pretty long line, we chose to just kind of pass it. But we went to this attraction, Terror in the Corn, 2 nights ago, and we went to Nightfall last night. And at Nightfall, we were thinking like, you know, honestly, let's just fucking go back to Terror in the Corn, because yeah, that shit is really fucking hype. Overall, I'm gonna give Terror in the Corn a strong 5 out of 10, probably like a 5.6 to a 5.7. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I was kind of like thinking earlier, like as far as like the schedule for the rest of this month, because there's only like a week left of October, and it's like the week of Halloween now. I was like, thinking of like all the stuff that I'm gonna be releasing throughout the rest of this month, and yeah, I got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of reviews coming. I got a couple special videos coming just for like the Halloween season, like that kind of a special video. Again, I have a vlog coming where we're going to like the most like haunted museum in the world. We're going to the biggest escape room in the world that are horror movie based. So I have a lot of content coming throughout this week. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helps you guys out with the week left of fucking October in Tucson. There obviously is still time to go to these events. I think they're open for like another week. So hopefully this video helped you guys out. It was just something like, again, after like how excited I was about Nightfall, I'm like, I could probably help people save some money. So, I mean, again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. In the very least, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing me talk about these fucking things and hearing me, roast them like a fucking mallow over the fucking fire pit. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys are having a good night. Take care, guys, and have a good rest of your October. I'll see you very soon.